In today's episode, we talk about week one predictions in the playoffs, why the NFL sleeps on the Bills, what the situation that is happening with black head coaches in the NFL, and UFC Fighter Pay. Tune in. This is the Shell Game. What is going on, everybody? Derek Pausa here, and welcome into the Shell Game. We're going to hop right into topic one with this weekend, Saturday's beginning. We're going to have an action-packed weekend Saturday through Monday with week one of the playoffs. So obviously we have the Titans and the Green Bay Packers on a bye this week. So let's hop into each individual team, kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are and what we're looking out in for these games. So we have the Chiefs versus the Steelers. You know, the Chiefs had a very weak and inconsistent start to the year. It's been interesting because we're used to seeing them being able to run and gun around the field at any angle, any length, any distance, run, pass, any defense that they're facing, and really just make things happen, whether it's mature football, backyard football. They're just able to get it done. That's the Chiefs that we're used to seeing. That's the exciting game that we're used to watching. Obviously, that has not been the case this year, and in the last two games alone, they've, I believe, let over 800 yards in offense against them, and not really making a whole lot of things happening on offense themselves. You know, in their opponent this weekend, we're seeing a team that has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, but a lot of experience and a lot of maturity with Big Ben and Tomlin this year. They had an interesting end of the year, and Ben barely made it in. But I think that they know what's at stake, and I think we're going to see a different type of Steelers team than we saw in the regular season this year. So I think this is going to be one of the closest games on the schedule this weekend. I think both teams know how to play that last 8 to 10 minutes of a fourth quarter. So if it's within one score, we're going to see probably similar, maybe not as dramatic, but similar to what we saw in the Chargers versus the Raiders, a back and forth down to the last seconds of the game, because they're going to execute when the time matters, even if that first, second, and third quarter don't have a lot of action going. So we'll be interested to see what happens there. But I do believe that what we end up seeing here is a Steelers pulling it off at the end and then losing in the second round. I don't think they make it any further than the second round, but I do think that they pulled off over the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to get excited. They've been here before. They know what it's like to win postseason games, but I think they're going to let that get to their head, and they're going to overcompensate and play a little bit sloppier than they probably want to in this weekend's game. Next up, we have the Bills versus the Pats. Now, I'm a fanatic when it comes to the Bills Mafia. That's my team. That's the style of food I like to eat. I was actually born at ECMC, which sponsors half of the Bills media. And it's just near and dear to my heart. My whole family loves the Bills. And what's interesting is they are the most, while inconsistent, the most slept on team in the NFL by far. I mean, they're setting just only records everywhere, franchise records, total records, like ever in history of NFL records, positional records, team records. It's just insane. The defense is holding number one records in almost every area. It wasn't even till I believe today on Friday, January 14th, to where AP started recognizing some of the defensive players in Hyde and Poyer. Before that, they weren't getting any recognition at all. And one of the most interesting facts or statistics that I saw out there is that if you flip all of the single score games in the entire NFL, the Bills were the only team that would have been 15-2. I know that's hearsay, and that's a little bit of pushing the envelope in it as it pertains to reality. However, you have to think that they know how to play with their talent, and when they're on, they're almost unstoppable. And they were still able to pull off a winning season, and they're ready to go. If you remember last year, Diggs staring at the Chiefs going on to the Super Bowl, and just the feeling that the Mafia had. We have the biggest fan base in the entire NFL. You're not going to stop us when it comes to supporting this team. And I don't think Mac Jones and the Pats, with how he's been playing and showing his immaturity as a quarterback, can actually pull through and come into this game and really do something in the midst of a sea of blue and red. I just don't see it happening. I think Josh Allen is going to crush the run game. Singletary has been on fire. Diggs is going to play like his literal career and life depends on it, because he wants to prove that he's a Super Bowl caliber receiver for this team. And that's not to mention anybody that is on the defense setting records too. And you're not gonna get past that defensive Frazier defense. So we'll be interested to see what happens there, but I think this is a two spread game for sure. Two touchdowns for sure. Bills win by at least 14 points and pull away and really stamp it to Mac Jones with Hyde and Poyer there. All right, next up we have the Raiders and the Bengals. I'm not even sure why the Raiders are in the playoffs. I think with the fourth quarter performance that they had against the Chargers there, the Chargers looked like more like a playoff team than the Raiders did. They did not play like they were one quarter away from being in the postseason. They did not play like they wanted to or wanted it. They did not play like they're going to beat playoff caliber teams. And while I do think they have a leader in Derek Carr, contrary to popular belief or awareness in the general public, Carr has not played a playoff game before. So I think the Raiders' only chance is to do what they did earlier this season and potentially hold Burrow to less than 150 yards in passing. So that way the Burrow Chase duo, which is really not second to anybody in the NFL, maybe the Stafford Cup connection there. But I just think if they can hold it to there, that's really their only chance at pulling it off against the Bengals. But the Bengals are sharp. They're playing tough. They have that wide receiver quarterback duo like we haven't seen before. And I think we see an insane passing game, yards in the hundreds and hundreds there. And I think they pull it off too by at least a touchdown, I would say at least 10 points there. A win over the Raiders, and the Raiders go back into planning as they should after that performance against the Chargers. Although injuries have plagued the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here towards the mid to end of the season, Bronk and Bronk, that should be their celebrity name, right? Grady and Bronk. Maybe that should be the name right there, Grady and Bronk. Brady and Gronk do this. This is what they do. They're used to this. This is essentially, they could do this in their backyard. They could do this down the street. They could do this at any stadium. This is what they do. And I think Brady wants to end strong, especially with where he's at in his career. Will this be his last year? Nobody knows. Could he probably go on? Yes. But he's already promoting forward-facing a lot of his other marketing ventures and business ventures like the Brady brand and all of that kind of stuff too. So I think this is a setup. If he were to get to the Super Bowl, at least, let alone win it, this is huge for a stamp on the end of his career as the greatest to ever play it. And the Eagles, I mean, my goodness, have been so inconsistent this year. And so I think that this is the biggest blowout of the entire weekend. May not be the highest scoring game in regards to both teams, which I'll get to in a second, but I do believe that it's the biggest point differential in the entire weekend as it pertains to week one of the playoffs. So I think the Buccaneers pull it off. I think they wipe the sweat off their brows if they even sweat in this game. And I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers put it away by at least 21 points here. And Brady just looks straight into the camera and says, I do this. Next, we have the Cowboys and the 49ers. We have a very tough, one of the toughest playing teams in the 49ers, both on offense and defense. They fight for it every single play. They're consistent in all four quarters. And while Dak and the rest of the team, you got hidden talent in there with Pollard. They have a lot of depth to the talent on their team. I just don't see them having the playoff maturity that they need to pull it through. I think we see glimmers of hope, some connections, some, break off run plays, 20 plus. I just don't see them getting it done against the 49ers. I think when it comes to the playoffs, it's the tough teams. It's the fundamentals and pushing beyond what you would normally push in a normal season. And the Dallas Cowboys struggle to do that, especially when things aren't clicking and being fluid on offense, and then the defense just kind of follows along too. So we'll see where that ends up. I think that's a one-score game for sure. Dallas Cowboys don't pull it off against the 49ers, and the 49ers advance to the next round, and then I think they fall off in their next opponent too. And so we rid ourselves of the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and the 49ers within the first two rounds of the playoffs. I think those teams will be all out, but I do think that the 49ers will pull it off against the Dallas Cowboys this weekend. And here we come to what I am deeming as the highest scoring game of the weekend. I think the Cardinals and the Rams game is going to be well into the 20s and 30s on both sides of the football. Obviously, the Cardinals struggle with their pass defense, and you don't want to struggle with your pass defense when it comes to Stafford and the Cup connection. I mean, you don't need to say more beyond the two words Stafford Cup. That connection is there against a defense that struggles against the pass game. And when you saw some of the time missed by Murray earlier this season and him coming back, they actually did worse when he came back. So we'll see what he can do when it comes to, handling the playoffs and handling one of the, tougher defenses in the playoffs in the postseason, but they're going to get thrown all over on defense. I think Murray makes it happen on offense, but I think ultimately the Rams pull away at the end by at least a touchdown. And this is the highest scoring game. I say 60 points above in this game with the Rams versus the Cardinals, and the Rams pull it off in the end. Hopping right into the next topic, why the league is sleeping on the Buffalo Bills and why I actually believe that they're going to pull it off and go all the way to the Super Bowl. Do I have enough faith as an avid Bills Mafia member to believe that they're going to pull it all the way through? We shall see when the time comes, but I believe that they make it this year, and here's why. You've got Josh Allen with the most total touchdowns in the last two seasons, only tied by Tom Brady and bested by Aaron Rodgers, two teams who probably could be Super Bowl caliber teams for the next 2 or 3 years, pending the depth chart and changes in retirement with some of the players. However, those are statistics that you don't see in the first 4 years of any quarterback, let alone another statistic of being the only player in NFL. Listen, not franchise history, not in the last 10 seasons, not in the last 20 years, in the entire NFL, the first ever quarterback to have 4,000 passing yards and 750 rushing yards in a single season. That's unheard of. Please tell me where you've seen it before. You can't, because this is Josh Allen, and he's either going to throw the football through your stomach or he's going to run the football towards you and jump over your entire body, including your stomach. This is the Josh Allen that we know and that nobody's really giving time and attention towards, especially with how much he's pressured. He was the most pressured quarterback in the entire league, and only 10.6% of those opportunities turned into sacks. That's huge. That means the dude is elusive. He can finagle, he can squirm, he can jump, he can run under you if he needs to, he can throw over you. The dude is just an all-star talent. And on the opposite side of the football, you have a defense that's ranked number one in almost every single potential and possible category for a defensive side of the football, and they're not getting recognition for it. And please name a team that is going to be able to pass all over this secondary of the Bills defense. Nobody. The only place where I see a potential weakness for the Bills in the postseason is their defense against the run game. That could be a potential hole. We've got a couple backfields that could really put some pressure on the Bills, but when they are on, and they can hold that point differential very, very, very tight and hold people to a lower points per game, which is why they're ranked in that as well. But let me talk about Poyer. I'm glad that he got the AP all-team recognition today, but let's look at some of these statistics. Only player in the entire NFL this year with 5 interceptions and 3 sacks, only allows 4.7 yards per completion, lowest in the NFL, and has the second coverage grade in the entire NFL with 89.5. So I have no idea why the league is sleeping on the Buffalo Bills. I think, when I was watching Red Zone and on Twitter for the past 2 or 3 weeks, it's very evident that there's lopsided and biased media coverage when it comes to Western New York. It's just not there. I mean, they will show anything and anyone and commentate every last minute of a game, and then cut to the Bills, show as little as they can, and they're silent throughout those moments. It's just despicable to me. I mean, the Bills are proving. I mean, how many records do you want broken before you start giving credit and daps to the Bills? They have turned this organization around. What McDermott has done in the last 4 seasons and saving the clown show, which was the Ryans, it's been astronomical. The maturity of the team, the communication of the team. Yes, we still have a couple glimmers of young players making some fundamental mistakes, but compared to the penalty ridden Bills that we used to know, I mean, my goodness, this is a full widespread depth of a team that is going to be hard to beat, and you're going to have to catch them off guard in order to knock them out of the playoffs, whether or not the league will give the Buffalo Bills the recognition that they deserve. All right, next up on the topic list, we have black coaches, people of color in the NFL. If you hadn't noticed by the camera, I have a little color on my skin, not much. Most of me is Caucasian and other ethnicities, but I have a little dip of chocolate in there. So I may or may not be qualified to at least share my perspective on this. But let's see. I see a lot of opinions about there only being essentially Mike Tomlin as a black head coach in the NFL. And let me provide potentially a little bit of resonance of a voice of truth within the sea of offenses that is limited head coaches in the NFL, which are black. In 2018, I see a lot of people tweeting about the coaches, the black coaches that were lost that year. I think there was like 5 coaches fired, leaving only 2 at the time, 2 or 3 at the time. And I actually went back and did a little bit of research to see what was happening, in those times. But we've had plenty of, first of all, coordinators and other coaching positions within organizations. We have plenty of color and diversity in those places. And I think the stigma is that with where culture is, with where the economy is, with where marketplaces and big tech and corporations are, this is, no different in the eyes of a lot of people in the sense of getting equal opportunity for people of color. And there's been a lot of obviously media coverage and fighting from multiple sides in the past years, from Kaepernick and beyond. And it's just been a mess when it comes to politicking within the NFL. And you can't deny that. There obviously are some imbalances. However, we've seen Louis Smith, we've seen Marvin Lewis, we've seen Tony Dungy and Mike Tomlin and Jim Caldwell and Anthony Lynn and Romeo Connell and Herman Edwards and Leslie Frazier, which have a huge heart for Leslie Frazier and Brian Flores, Todd Bowles, So as I'm going back through this list of the 2018 coaches that were fired and what has happened specifically since then, right? So in 2018, the Cincinnati's coach was fired, Marvin Lewis. Arizona's coach was fired, Steve Wilk. Broncos coach Vance Joseph, Jets Todd Bowles, as well as the Browns Hugh Jackson. Now let me read off the stats and records of those teams since those moments, because a lot of that, in my opinion, were very good organizational decisions by those teams. Cincinnati, Marvin Lewis was 6-10 in his last season in 2018. Then they dipped for a bit. They went 2-14, 4-11 in 2019 and 2020, and then obviously this year 10-7 and in the playoffs. 4 years to turn an organization around. Not everybody can be as beautiful as the Bills in their first 4 years of turning something around. I know we set the standard so high without our recognition, but 4 years and you're at where you're at. I mean, I would say Cincinnati made a pretty good choice there. Going on to Arizona. Arizona was 3-13 in 2018, then 5-10, then 8-8, and now they're 11-6 and back into a place where people are recognizing the Cardinals as a run and gun team that can get the job done. Again, 4 years to turn the organization around. I think it was a fantastic decision. The Browns and the Jets is where I can potentially agree. Not agree with the fact that they were fired and that was an offense that should be taken, but agree in the sense of they didn't make a good follow-up decision after those 2 coaches and Vance Joseph and Todd Bowles were fired, because they went 6-10, the Broncos, 7-9, 5-11, and 7-10. And where are they at right now? Aside from handing it to the Chiefs to give them a little spanking and wake-up call before the playoffs, what have they done? I get it. And then the Jets, I'm sorry, Gary Vee and all the other people of the world, should they be a team? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to give, a little bit too harsh of an opinion there, but 4-12, 7-9, 2-14, and 4-13. I mean, my goodness, there should be a clause in the NFL where if you lose a certain amount of games within a 5-year time period, you got to rebrand your team and start over, move to the XFL, something. I mean, maybe Dwayne Johnson could turn it around. I have no idea, but I agree. Firing and not making good follow-up decisions. Obviously, there's been other things in regards to talent and roster and depth and caps and all that kind of stuff that have affected those 2 teams. However, they just haven't gotten to the job done since that decision. But the Browns, I mean, my goodness, aside from the injury-ridden season that they've had, a lot of people thought they were Super Bowl contenders this year. A lot of people who have a lot of knowledge of football thought that this year. They went from 7-8 in 2018 to 6-10, kind of repeated the results, but then obviously had some talent changes, some free agent moves and all that kind of stuff. 11-5 last year, everybody remembers that, and only 8-9 this year. If they didn't have the injuries, I would have guessed they would have went 10-6 or 11-5 again. But these are good decisions. These are decisions that are organizational decisions. And while I believe that there does need to be balance, there needs to be equal opportunity within these organizations, and we're about to talk about something very similar in the UFC as well, there's opportunity there. I just think there's also other qualifications and things that need to be met and track records that need to be proven before we're just putting people in positions to politic and put a stamp of approval within an organization or a team in the NFL. I just don't think it's necessary to bring that into this world beyond very glaring differences and prejudices, which are few and far between. And when they are, they're handled, they're handled very well, in my personal opinion. So, with the Bills singing their praises again, Frazier is probably going to get another chance at a head coach. I think he was one of the people that was let go as a head. Who was he head coach of? I can't remember. But I think he's going to get that opportunity again. He's proven himself. He's consistent. His defense is crazy. His offense is crazy. His knowledge of the game is crazy. I just think he's an all-around good player, and McDermott is advocating for that. So there's definitely a lot of great things in the NFL and a lot of great people of color who are going to get the opportunity. And I don't think we need to elevate that or amplify it beyond what it actually is as a fan base, of regardless of what your team is, because a lot of them, over half of them were very good organizational decisions, short of the Broncos and the Jets. And that is just what it is. Sometimes, facts outshine emotional preferences and historical relevance, because the reality is it's stats, it's data, and it's a game. So at the end of the day, you got to move numbers, regardless of what your skin color and ethnic background is. And last but not least, on this episode of The Shell Game, we're going to talk about UFC Fighter Pay. If you have been living under a rock, you might not know the back and forth dialogue that has happened between the likes of Jake Paul and Dana White. Obviously, there's been plenty of players in the past who have come forward about being gypped of opportunities for, ranked fights or appropriate pay for fights. From John Jones to Masvidal to plenty of others that are now coming forward with the help of outside voices of the organization. And listen, I think that one thing you have to understand is that there's marketing and PR and everything. They literally call themselves the promotion for a reason. And the fight game is huge because you're not dealing with rosters of team and talent. You're dealing with one performer backed by gyms and coaches and smaller organizational units that are trying to position their fighters not only for their career inside of the octagon, but for their brand deals and for their image and for their character that allows them to build other things within their career. And, I had a problem with the UFC for a while by incentivizing essentially chaotic behavior with the, Khabib and Conor era. A lot of the stuff that was happening there, you got the Covingtons of the world. You just got a lot of loudmouths who know that in order to elevate yourself in the UFC, you got to have odd colored hair. You got to, do some crazy celebration. You had people backflipping off the octagon just to get more attention and recognition because they understand that if they have social media relevance, they're going to get paid more. So anytime you have these behavioral attributes of contenders and fighters within an organization like the UFC, in order just to earn the recognition and pay they deserve, you need to take marketing and PR and mostly administrative and operational effort to make sure those people are covered, because you don't have a proprietary approach and perspective on promoting events. At the end of the day, that's all it is. And somebody's going to come along, whether it's within the realm of MMA or somebody like a YouTuber transitioning into the fight world, and they're going to call you out on that. And they're going to have a little bit more pull or different connections that may sting a little bit. They're going to be able to leverage or siphon off of attention or relationships until fighters finally put their foot down, like Francis Ngannou, and saying, I'm not fighting for $500,000 or $600,000 anymore. And that's just not going to happen. And they should be able to do that. There's no reason John John Jones should be sitting on a shelf, despite his off, the octagon or outside of the octagon happenings, which are all up for debate, right? When did sports turn into, okay, we're going to evaluate every aspect of your life, like you're going to become the president of the United States, and we have to make sure we have the most thorough investigative journalistic, bruh, get out of here. This is a business within a game, or a game within a business, and you have to treat people fairly. And there is very, very glaring differences between other sports like the NFL and the UFC in regards to how much of overall revenue is given to the people that help you earn that revenue. So I think with the UFC, because fighters have such a direct line and measurable line too, by the way. I mean, we live in a day and age where social data is available at a level of clarity that it's never been before, between software and integrations and platforms and all that kind of stuff. So there's a straight provable line between a lot of these fighters' ability to promote a fight and the results that they're bringing in, especially when they stamp that with a performance that's worthy of social recognition too, and bringing more eyes to the game. So all of those things have to come together in one unified effort in order for this not to be a PR disaster for the next 12 to 18 months and take a huge chunk out of the UFC. Because I remember they were acquired by ESPN, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, however long ago it was. And obviously that added a lot more programmatic ability, operational ability, resources, systems and processes that were already working, accesses to backdoor organizational things and event spaces and all that kind of stuff, a lot more leverage and pull. However, we've seen so many different acquisitions over organizations and platforms and businesses before, where that corporate red tape and infrastructure and slow response to public appeal has killed the initial zeal and the initial sharpness that was in the startup or the growing organization that they acquired in the first place. So I think if they're not careful, they are going to essentially watch somebody else replicate the good things and execute on the gaps that they had, and ultimately take the attention away. And do I see the UFC really going anywhere as it pertains to an organization? No, they have far too much mind share as an organization, as a brand. So they're definitely going to put pressure on Dana eventually to make some type of decision. But this is you want to catch this stuff before it turns into a California wildfire. You want to catch this. He already missed the opportunity to respond to Jake in a much more calculated way. This isn't your little food show that you do to impress people before fights with humor and all that kind of stuff and diversify your media content. This is real-time organizational things that need to be addressed with sophisticated and well-crafted, with behavioral follow-through messaging, so that way people know, okay, this is a priority, this is a focus, and whether or not I agree with the people accusing me, it is something that I'm going to focus on as a leader and as the CEO of a growing and thriving organization. So I think that we need to see some type of PR response from the UFC. And if Dana White doesn't have the capability of clearly communicating that, they need to find somebody who does pretty quick, because you can't be all things as a CEO. Sometimes you need people who are a little bit better at communicating ideas and mobilizing things than the person who's able to grow it to a certain point. And that's business 101, right? Sometimes the people who helped you get to a certain level aren't the people who can help you grow it beyond that level. And I don't think Dana's hitting a cap, but you got to evolve with the times, and nobody's immune to that. So we'll see what happens there with the UFC, but they're in for it this year. And, they have a somewhat of a good schedule for Q1, but compared to the last few years, I was just talking to my family and my friends about this. UFC's schedule is kind of weak, and I wonder if it has a little bit to do with fighters being reluctant to not get what they need when it comes to benefits and fighter pay for these contracts that they're being asked to fulfill. So we'll see. Clauses aside, obligations contractually aside, the UFC needs to address that, and we'll see what they end up doing or suffer the consequences. So this has been episode 1 of the Show Game. Thank you guys for tuning in. I've enjoyed spending my time with you. Derek Palze on Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere, and we will talk to you guys soon. Peace.